You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Garibaldi Red, the Nottingham Forest podcast from Nottinghamshire Live, where we are here to review Derby 1, Forest 1, and we've made our own double change from the preview show where Steve Nicholson is off unceremoniously, aging legs replaced by youth in the form of our fellow Reach football writer Rich Cusack. Hello, Rich.
Hi guys, thanks for inviting me on.
And Barry Cooper has, his Wi-Fi succumbed terribly, so Sarah Clapson has stepped into the breach. Welcome back, Sarah.
Hello, welcome.
Sarah, what was it like? I assume you were, putting your fan hat on, not your writer's hat on, pretty gutted or not after 97 minutes?
I think because of the way it happened, Forest will be, though you could tell they were gutted at the end, but if you after you let the dust kind of settle on it, I think a point really is not a bad result. And they played really well. I think they deserved to win it, definitely. It was just the manner in which they conceded it right at the end. Looked like they were going to hang on and get the 3 points, and then just that horrible minute right at the end. It was gut-wrenching for them. But in the cold light of day, I think a point, it really isn't that bad. It probably, a point is better for Derby. They probably needed it more than Forest. Forest, I think the top two is always going to be a stretch for them, and it's more just about kind of accumulating enough points to make sure of the top 6 place, really. Albeit I think they're pretty much there. It will take quite a spectacular fall now for them to drop out. But yeah, just the way it happened really was pretty gutting.
Rich, you cover the Rams, but you're also a big Rams fan. How would Derby fans have reflected on that game, given the way it finished?
I think to get away from that game with a point was nothing but positive. I mean, Derby were laboured, they were poor. They weren't the Derby we'd seen for the past 3 matches, and indeed the 2 before lockdown, when they were carving teams open at will and really dictating and dominating the play. And I mean, I was very relieved for Derby to come away from that game with a point, because they were very, very poor indeed.
What I didn't understand was Koku's tactics at the start of the game. Derby were very conservative, and I guess they didn't want Forest to counter on them, but it made Derby really easy to play against. Rich? What did you make of Koku's tactics? Did he get it all wrong? I mean, he's been outmanoeuvred by Lamucci a few times now this season.
I was really surprised, actually, in the way that Derby started the game, because they paid Forest too much respect. They didn't take the game to them, and they almost looked. I don't want to use the word scared, because I don't think the players were scared, but they did look a bit timid and a little bit sort of. I don't know if they were sort of. Perhaps might have been a game too far in terms of tiredness, perhaps a bit leggy maybe, but they when Joe Lolly scored, it was almost, you could see it coming from a mile off. Forest were much the better team. I was surprised at the way that Derby set up. Yeah, certainly, because after 10 minutes, I sort of turned to my mother and my sister. We were watching the game with them. We all said the same thing. We said that Forest looked like they're going to go and take this game and win it. That was after 10 minutes. So I was surprised. Yeah, I was.
Forest dominated the game in midfield, really, Sarah, didn't they? Lamucci picked the right 3 players. They subdued Rooney. Watson did a really good job on Sibley, who, to be fair, I think looks really good without actually doing much in the game. Midfield is where Forest got the best of it, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that midfield of Sal, Watson and Yates is pretty strong. Derby barely laid a glove on them, really. They were so slow. They had no tempo. And I think when Lolly scored, he was probably surprised at the amount of space that he was given. They just stood off him. They just let him get the ball onto his left foot and have a go. And when he does that, then he, more often than not, he'll find the back of the net, because he's absolutely deadly. It was a bit surprising in that sense that they just gave him the freedom of Pride Park and he could do with it what he wanted. It was a good-looking team, I think, Forest. They set themselves up really well. Lamucci obviously had a plan. It worked for pretty much the entire game, right up until those last few seconds. And that's something that's hampered Forest quite a bit this season. These lapses of concentration right at the death, where they concede these late goals and they don't see games out. particularly since the restart, there's been a few late goals that they've conceded. But even prior to that, throughout the season, they've let a few in. And whether it's concentration or whether it's kind of missing chances, which is what they did against Derby, they missed plenty to have made the game safe. They just don't. Sometimes they're just not able to see the games out as you would hope or as you would expect, and that's why they're where they are. Really, if they had, they'd be in the top two. But those drop points have proved costly.
Yeah, we'll come on to lapse concentration and terrible goals. But looking at the first goal, I mean, I don't think it was a great day for keepers all round. I thought Samba didn't have his best game at all. But do you think, Rich, that Hamer might be disappointed with that first goal? I know it went into the corner, but he looked a bit flat-footed, do you think?
It was pinpoint from Lolly, wasn't it? It was in upper post. They're always hard to get, those ones that nestle right in the corner. But I think, having watched it, I've watched the replay of it slowed down, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, we should be moving, watching it on half speed where it looks like everything's going so slow. But I think that two players could have gone and charged Lolly down there. I mean, they shouldn't have let him get the ball there in the first place. Never mind letting him get the shot away. It's a speculative effort, and I think Hamer, really, the question marks have been over Darbys goalkeepers. I'm not sure who's played. I'd probably wager that in the 3 games that Derby have played Forest, I think they might have faced a couple of keepers in Kelleroos, and he was Derby's number one, obviously. Dropped his big clanger at Wembley in the playoff final, got a contract off his good form, but he is the only keeper on Derby's books out of the two, Hamer, who's on loan from Huddersfield Town, who's actually with the club, and he can't get a start. Hamer will probably go back to Huddersfield, but he continues to start. So it's a really confusing situation with Scott Carson on in at Man City as well. But Hamer, I think the question marks have been over him, and I thought Derby probably should have tested Bryce Samba more, because while he's good with his feet, I've watched him in a couple of. He's been a bit nervy at times this season. I remember being at Birmingham with Sarah. I think it was on the day after transfer deadline day, where early on. Do you remember that, Sarah? When he I forget exactly what happened, but he almost seemed to release the ball. It cannoned off one of the Birmingham players, and I've always thought he looked a little bit nervy in goal sometimes, Bryce Samba. So I was surprised Derby didn't test him a little bit more. That was what I was sort of saying throughout the game. Get some shots off. Let's try and test a goalkeeper at least. And Forest did with Hamer, and obviously got the reward.
What do you think, Sarah, about Samba? His handling was a bit off, I thought, on the day.
Yeah, he didn't have his best of games, I don't think, against Derby. Some of the crosses he came for, I thought he could have caught them rather than try and punch them. The goal, he definitely could have done better with that, I think. But I mean, there's been plenty of times this season where he saved for us, where he's made these brilliant saves and he's stepped in. He had an off day on Saturday, but he's still a good goalkeeper. I think he's still one of the best goalkeepers they've had for a while. He's pretty solid normally. It's quite uncharacteristic of him to make such a big error like that. He's, like Richard said, he has had a few, but I think you'll struggle to find a goalkeeper that doesn't have the odd slip up.
Derby started the second half a little bit brighter, and then Lamucci made some interesting subs that I thought actually worked out really well. He put a more attacking player in Silva. DaCosta, who I thought had a decent game, came off as well. And then Forest really should have gone on to win the game, shouldn't they, really, Sarah? Silva's hit the post, Graben's missed 2, Myton's had a chance where he's a bit unlucky to lose his footing. Forest should have gone on to be 2 or 3 up, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could tell. There was somebody who said afterwards that they were surprised that Dawson didn't get brought on at the end to kind of shore things up. And I think you could see from the substitutions that Forest made that they were going for the second goal. They were going to attack. They brought on Amiobi and Silva, 2 attacking players, rather than try and settle for the 1-0. They wanted to increase that lead, and they did have their chances. The 2 that Graben had, you'd normally expect him to put them away. He's normally pretty cool in front of goal. Alex Myton's was a good one. Thiago Silva hit the post. They created a few good opportunities, just couldn't take them. And that's what cost them, really, in the end. By the time that it got to added time, they should have been 2 or 3-0 up, definitely, and made the game safe. It was, they'll have been cursing themselves afterwards.
Did you see Derby ever getting back into it, Rich? Maybe after Graben's miss, did you see any sign of life in them?
I did tweet sort of halfway through the second half saying it feels like there's a goal coming. Obviously, but the predictable replies were, for Forest. Like 3 or 4 people said, "Who for Forest?" I said, "Yeah, all right." But I think Derby did step it up. I mean, they obviously started the better after half time, but given the performance they put in the first half, couldn't have started much worse. So I think they did look better, they did look brighter. I think Forest, though, yeah, like Sarah says, he should have been two or three goals up. Like, as a Derby fan, any Derby fans listen to me now won't like it when I say this, but I love Thiago Silva. Like, I think he's a brilliant player. I think he when he did a little flip flap on, was it Dwayne Holmes at the City Ground game, I was sort of sat there thinking, wow, he's a top player. I think he's brilliant, and he was unlucky to go close, obviously. But I did feel like Derby stepped it up a little bit. They started to move the ball around a little bit better. They were getting crosses in. They did manage to finally get the ball into Sibley's feet on the edge of the box, and obviously that's where he got his goals against Millwall on the opening game back, and that's where he'd set up Tom Lawrence as for his goal against Reading, just getting the ball into Sibley, letting him work his magic feet sort of on the edge of the box and try and trip defenders up or sort of just create a bit of space. And I did think Derby were getting back into it. I really did. Obviously, they went close with, I think it was Chris Martin, when Josephine, for some reason, let it go out for a goal kick. I still don't understand that. That was a good chance. I did feel like we were knocking on the door, definitely.
How much did Derby miss Lawrence? Because it wasn't really until Waghorn came on they really even tried to stretch Forest. Is Lawrence the player that can do that? Since the turn of the year, he's been fantastic. He's just been brilliant. He obviously scored the opening goal against Reading, which was that lovely 25-yard curled effort, which up until then it was a very even game. He's a really good. He's a player who can conjure something out of nothing, and I think that's a sort of game for Forest match was what Derby needed. Somebody who could. You think it'd be Wayne Rooney, but obviously playing from midfield, his sort of ability to do that is negated somewhat by the fact he plays further back. And I think Lawrence certainly would have been a good player for this game because he's been in brilliant form, and obviously Derby are missing him. You could see that against Preston, and obviously they'll miss him for West Brom and Waghorn for another 3 games. So Lawrence is a really good player. He's really improved. He's had his troubles, but been well documented. But since the turn of the year, he's just been fantastic. And yeah, definitely, I think he'd have ran at the Forest wing fullbacks, and it obviously would have tried to conjure something in the final third, which is what Derby lacked massively. Just mentioning Waghorn there, I mean, you can't gloss over the red card. He apologised after the game, saying there was no malice in it. I don't actually buy that. I thought he looked at the man and his studs were up and his leg was pretty straight, and he was lucky he didn't snap Yates' leg. What do you think, Sarah? I mean,
it was a horrible challenge. Awful. I think Yates was lucky to come out of it like he did, really. I mean, he'd been in the wars a little bit all afternoon, really, considering he had to wear a mask because of having been in the wars the previous game. He really got put through the ringer. I don't think you could argue with the red card. I think it was pretty nailed on. He seemed like he went in with a bit of intent, but I don't know. I guess you kind of have to take his word for it, and I don't know. But it wasn't a nice challenge.
Do you have to take his word for it, Rich? Is he that kind of player? It looked bad.
He's not really that. That's the funny thing. Like, he's never really showed that sort of. He shows aggression, but he doesn't show sort of unhinged. But that looked to me like it was a poor tackle. I saw a couple of people saying, "Oh, it was late this time." I mean, the foot was nowhere near the ball, was it? I mean, I don't see how anybody could argue that he was going for the ball with that challenge. That's what I don't understand. I think he's like I said just now. He's an aggressive player, and he brings some venom, which is what Derby need. But that's just too far the other way, isn't it? I mean, I didn't like that tackle when I saw it. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, it's not mistimed if you have time to look at the bloke and know what's coming towards you. It's mistimed if you pile in and legs clash into each other, to be fair. What did you think of the impact that not having a crowd made? Because I tweeted out I thought the ref had a really good game, and I think the lack of a crowd was a big factor in that. How much of a factor was the lack of a crowd, Sarah?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the ref did have a decent game. The lack of a crowd probably suited Forest. I know they said beforehand that they didn't think it would give them any kind of advantage, but I think it probably did. If you're thinking of going to a derby, you think of the atmosphere and you think of the crowd normally and the noise and the fans getting on the referee's back or getting on the team's back, it would have such an impact. I'm sure it probably suited Forest more than it did Derby, just being able to play the way that they wanted, really, and they were able to stick to their plan, do what the manager asked of them, play their game, keep a lid on Derby, didn't give them very much at all. And had a crowd been there, I think they would have started to, the fans would have got more agitated. You would have heard them getting on Darbys back, encouraging them forward, and that would have added an extra bit of something. Forest have dealt with the lack of fans since the restart really well. I think they've been really professional about it. And I've been quite surprised by, in all games, that the tempo has been pretty good. They've not, I mean, when you're watching it and you're there, it kind of, you think, oh, it feels a bit like a friendly game or a bit like a pre-season game. But the players are absolutely not like that at all. They're very committed, and you can see that by some of the tackles and the fact that they're throwing themselves in front of everything when they're there. I mean, some of them have really been put through the ringer in the last few games. They're really professional, and they really want it. You can see that they still really want it.
If we dissect the Derby goal in isolation, like you say, they want it. There's no lack of work rate. So what the hell happened, really? Because Joe Worrell's been so good, and it was a terrible decision. And then obviously Samba comes, and it's just a cascade of errors. Not for the first time in stoppage time. What's your take on it?
It was a free kick they didn't need to give away in the first place. I think Joe Worrell will probably hold his hands up for that and say that, you know, it was needless. It was so soft, right in the last minute, right, you know, where it was, the timing of it and everything. Then the ball came in, obviously, from Wayne Rooney. Brice Samba shouted for it, didn't really come. It got knocked back in, nobody cleared it, and Chris Martin just somehow managed to scramble it over the line, albeit I think it was Thiago Silva who was there trying to clear it, didn't quite get there. It was a horrible goal. It was a really bad goal to concede, and Forest had looked really solid for most of the game. Brice Samba really hadn't had that much to do. They'd looked pretty strong defensively. I thought Joe Worrell had perhaps looked a little more nervy than he has done previously, but I mean, he was by no means terrible before that moment, and he, you know, I don't think you can pin all the blame on him by any means. But it was just an awful goal. It was one they could have avoided, and one you'd probably expect them to avoid. But it's these late lapses in concentration that are really proving costly.
I guess, like you say, that's why they are fifth, not second. I mean, that goal at Sheffield Wednesday was even worse. So It is in them, but I suppose you take the contribution of Worrell over the course of a season with the clearance at Sheffield Wednesday and things like that, and him and Samba and Graben are well in credit, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the social media criticism afterwards was just awful. They really don't deserve that. There are three players who have been absolutely key to how Forest have played and who have got them to where they are. Lewis Graben scored, he's nearly got 20 goals this season, and that's not happened for a long, long time at Forest, having somebody do that. I'm pretty sure he'll break that tally by the end. He's been crucial. Joe Worrell's been brilliant. Him and Tobias Figueiredo have been so solid, that partnership. He's made some brilliant clearances, saved them a few points. Same with Brice Samba, he's pulled off some brilliant saves. It was just, they each, for whatever reason, just had a moment against Derby, and it's not about individual players at all, it's about a collective, and Forest as a team, as a unit, should have been able to see that out.
So Rich, it's Forest v Derby in the playoffs. Who's going to win, and try and make a good case for Derby, because they haven't done anything. They haven't really laid a glove on Forest this season, apart from that one goal.
I think the only case I can probably make is just the fact that if you haven't beaten him 3 of them, then surely the law of averages, he must beat him. But no, look, joking aside, I think Derby, it'd be interesting because Forest, if Derby play Forest in the playoffs, then both teams can't, Forest can't sit back, and if you decide to sit back and then wait, Derby might get a goal and then it will force them out. They can't do that every game, can they? Especially in the playoffs, you have to come out and play at least one game. So I think, I don't even know where to start. I wouldn't be able to handle it in playoffs. I couldn't do it. I go out for a run or something. I go to the gym if it's open. I do anything other than watch that game. I think. Are
they actually going to make the playoffs then, do you think, Derby?
I think it's in their own hands. We've got 5 games left, 5 massive games. They've got to play Brentford, Leeds. They've got to play West Brom on Wednesday coming up, and then they've got to play Cardiff, who are obviously 3 points ahead. So it's in their own hands. In all, win out and win against Cardiff. I know it's a tough ask, but going into coming out of lockdown and looking at the fixtures we had, we would have taken 3 wins on the bounce, and we didn't think that was going to happen. So I think the momentum is still with Derby, and if they can just find a way to break these teams down, I don't think, obviously, when when Derby played West Brom on Wednesday, West Brom would be looking to get the job done. So you wouldn't expect them to sit back like Forest have done, and you wouldn't expect the same from Leeds either. Or Brentford, obviously. And Cardiff will be an interesting one because Neil Harris's teams, they do like to, if they go into the game with the advantage to Cardiff, then that'll be a similar game to the Forest match. And obviously Blues on the last day of the season. I can see it going down to the wire, and that prospect sort of terrifies me but also excites me at the same time.
Do we think, Sarah, I've written down Brentford, Fulham, Forest, are they certain to be three of the playoff teams? And so who do you think's the fourth?
I think Derby might just sneak it. If they can play better than they did in the first half, particularly on Saturday, I was surprised by that. I was expecting a bit more from them, particularly with the run that they've been on previously. But I think if they can get back to playing perhaps a bit more like how they do, then I think they might just get in there. But it is going to be close, definitely very close. I think they've got a tough run, Derby. I know it seems like everybody has, but yeah, I think Derby might just get there. And I'm pretty certain that Forest are going to get a playoff place now, and I don't think they'll be too worried about who they face, really. They seem to do better against the top sides. And I don't, over two legs, I don't think they particularly fear taking on anybody. No,
I mean it's Fulham tomorrow. I thought the best performance of the season was Fulham away. Fulham are a funny team, aren't they? How do you see that game tomorrow?
I think it'll be another close game. They've all been pretty tight for Forest since the restart, and there's not been a lot in them really. I think it'll probably be pretty similar to the ones they've already played, even though it's obviously at the City Ground. I think Forest will go into it wanting to win. It's a big game. They'll want to get those 3 points, and I think pretty much make sure of a playoff place. Albeit I think they're probably just about there already. But yeah, it is a big game. They've obviously been unbeaten since the restart, and they want to keep that going because you want to go into the playoffs with some momentum, feeling good, getting some good results behind you, and particularly if it's against teams that you may face in there. So they'll want to put one over on Fulham, definitely.
And no Mitrovic, Forest, I mean, he's not like the big target man. He's a lot more than that. He's the best striker in the Championship, arguably. Forest do tend to struggle though against that kind of player, so he's out. I mean, that's a big lift, isn't it?
Oh, massive! Yeah, massive for Forest going into that game knowing that he's not playing. He would be a tricky customer for them to handle. I mean, Fulham still got a decent team. They've still got good players, and they can still cause Forest problems if they want to. But I think Forest played so well against Derby. It was probably their best performance for a while, even going back before lockdown, and they'll want to keep that going. They want to put another good performance in. I'm sure they will do. But Lamucci's really good tactically. He got it spot on Saturday, and I'm sure he'll have it'd be interesting to see what team he picks actually, because I thought Nuno da Costa, like you said, did really good. He's probably put a case for himself to start again. Whether Sambasau can start again, I don't know. I think Forest probably pick and choose now.
Yeah, I don't think Sau could start, could he?
No, I think Forest will pick and choose what games they put him forward for now. They obviously saw Derby as a big one, and it helped having that kind of beefed up midfield, if you like, with him and Watson and Yates. But yeah, I'd be surprised if he starts tomorrow. But yeah, interesting to see what side he picks, whether Silva and Amiobi come back in. He's got a few options now, Lamucci. I thought Diakabi actually did quite well when he came on.
He did. Let's give him some credit.
Yeah, he did. He caused them a few problems. He stretched Derby a little bit. I mean, he's obviously got pace. You can't argue against that. But he looked a lot more composed and a lot better on the ball than he has done previously. And if he can just find that final pass, then he's got something about him. So whether he gets another chance, it'd be interesting to see.
Rich, last one for you. Do you think Lamucci's got the edge on Cocu as a coach? So he certainly has tactically this season. He's won that battle so far, hasn't he? Do you think Cocu can get the better of him?
He has. I really like Lamucci as a coach. I remember watching the Leeds game in February, and that was top class. That was really good from Lamucci. Obviously, we went and lost to Charlton, I think it was, at home the following. And that seems to be the story of Forest season so far, doesn't it? So take a big step and then sort of drop points. But I think in terms of coaching and tactically, I don't know too much about that. I think they're both obviously their own. They've got their own tactical setups, but it's clear to see that Forest have had Derby on the ropes for a good while now. I don't think Derby have beat Forest since what was it, like October 2017? That sort of time when Derby won 2-0 and Vidra scored after like 20 seconds or something. I don't think Forest have lost to Derby since then. So I think it must be more of a just a general Derby Forest thing with Cocu and Lamucci. But I think certainly on Saturday it seemed that Derby we just didn't look. I wouldn't say lack of desire, but just a lack of quality and the lack of cutting edge. I think if the teams meet in the playoffs or even in the playoff final, it'll just be a completely different circumstance altogether. Derby by then would have Lawrence and Waghorn back, and don't forget Andrew Wisdom as well, who obviously has been out. They missed him on Saturday, but I think in terms of sort of tactically between the two of them, I think Lamucci was obviously, that Carabao Cup game was one where Cocu picked the kids. I think a lot of fans who went there and who didn't go were very annoyed at that, because they felt that Cocu wasn't taking the match seriously. He didn't know what it meant to the fans, all the rest of it. I don't buy that personally. Obviously, in the was it November when Graven scored, that came as a result of a mistake from Jayden Bogle. So I don't think you can look too much into it in terms of that. But certainly on Saturday, that'll give Derby a big wake up call. Especially even if we do face Forest in the playoff. But I think just in generally, because Derby, Forest did a job on Derby then. That was a big warning sign.
Sarah, Forest v Fulham prediction. What do you think? I got the Derby score right. So.
Did you?
Yeah, but I only said that because the other two had said their teams would win, so I just went in the middle.
I think Forest will win tomorrow. I think it'll be 1-0.
Rich, who have Derby got next?
We've got West Brom on Wednesday evening, away at the Hawthorns.
Well, we'll give you two predictions then. You're the only guest who's ever had two predictions. What's your prediction for Forest v Fulham and then Derby v West Brom?
I think Fulham, like you say, are a really funny team, aren't they? They just seem to be they seem to put in some good performances one week and then just completely just don't turn up the next. I know Scott Parker's had a bit of a tough time there. Some fans have wanted him out on occasion this season. So I think Forest will beat Fulham. I'm going to say 2-0. And with regards to Derby West Brom, I'm going to take 1-1 draw. Again, I'd take a draw, but draws might not be enough at this stage of the season. But I'll settle for a draw at West Brom.
Thanks for joining us, folks. That was really a good discussion, a good breakdown of the game. We'll be back on Wednesday, looking back on Forest v Fulham with Sarah, hopefully, and whoever else I can rope in at the last minute. Rich, you did a good turn. You've been playing tennis this morning.
Thank you very much. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Did you win?
No, I lost, but I've got another game later on, so it's in and then out again.
Another game? Oh, Andy Murray.
Yeah, well, I'll get my money's worth.
Well, thanks for joining us. If people like the episode, as always, please do like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And we shall be back soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.